all-time strongest. Each member of the winning team shall be allowed a personal wish on the Dragon Balls. But wait, there's more. Over right now.
Oh my god! It's literally any time! That's the perfect time to play Worms Armageddon! I think it's safe to say that everybody had a pretty good experience with their school years. Wait, no, I meant the opposite of that. Even if sometimes we'd rather have been anywhere else, as adults we can look back on these days of our lives and realise just how important they were to us. After all, they literally built our entire understanding of the world and helped shape our development as people. For example, I developed into a failure. But let's be honest, most of school was pretty boring. I could go on and critique the education system as a whole and how it does a shit job of making children feel invested in learning, but that's not the topic of this video, nor any future video. If you want that, go subscribe to the smart people. Back in January, we saw the announcement of Nintendo Labo, which looks to provide an educational experience to kids during their playtime. And it got me thinking of all the other attempts that have been made to weld education and video games together. Sometimes they worked really well, such as the Pajama Sam games or the Oregon Trail series. And sometimes they didn't. But the unveiling of Nintendo Labo got me thinking. Surely this isn't the first time Nintendo have tried this sort of thing. A company as experimental as them must have, at least at some point, tried to bridge the gap between learning and fun. And it turns out they did. Released in 1993 on the Super Nintendo, Mario's Time Machine is a game about Mario, travelling through time and fixing changes made to history by Bowser. You do this by returning stolen items to various historical figures while filling out a history test. Surprisingly, the game actually does have a story, albeit a brief summary before the title screen. My favourite part is the really off-looking character designs, which aren't helped by the fact that the artist who drew these wasn't very good.
So, oh my god! What's wrong with your face?
The gameplay, and I use that term loosely, begins inside Bowser's castle, where we see 5 objects atop pedestals. No doubt these are the stolen historical treasures that we have to return. After selecting one, we're told to return it to its owner, and when we hit R, we see both where and, more importantly, when the item came from, along with the fill-in-the-blank history quiz that we have to complete. We'll sort that out later, I suppose. So, how exactly does Mario travel through time? Does he have a little blue box? No. Does he jump through a portal? No. Okay, the box art shows him flying about in a weird little space pod with a piano up its arse, so it's gotta be that, right? No. After you input a time and destination, you go surfing. I mean, it makes sense to me. The actual interface for the time machine is this big gold steampunk monstrosity which requires you to manually enter the desired year number by number. And no, sadly they did not program for the thousands of possible years that Mario could go to. If you input a year that's not in the game, the surfing segment will just put you right back in the castle. Which is a shame really, because if we could go to any time period, I know exactly where I'd go. Once you arrive in the correct year, the first thing you'd logically want to do is talk to people, but there's no one around. Everyone you can talk to is inside a building or off in the distance, and when you do speak to people, you'll soon wish that you didn't. Oh, 'tis to make the head swim. Calculus is a very advanced type of mathematics that is allowed to discern no doubt. I came in the assault of the enemy's If you can get through the barrage of seemingly endless information, you may have been able to garner a few facts about a particular historical person. This is where that test comes in. See, you're supposed to talk to these people in order to learn all of the answers you'll need to fill in the blank spaces. And you can't return the stolen item until it's been completed. What kind of sense does that make? If I'm trying to return something to someone, why would having filled out a questionnaire about their life make them more likely to accept it? Personally, I'd find that a bit suspicious. Through the course of talking to these people, you'll find that most of them have also lost something, and speaking to other people can get you gifted these items, and basically it becomes that episode of Ed, Edd and Eddy where they're trying to get eggs from Rolf. You don't even need to get these people their stuff back. All it gives you is more trivia for the quiz. If you already know the answers, you don't have to speak to anyone. Essentially, returning the stolen item acts as the main quest for each time zone, and everyone else you talk to are side quests that you don't really have to complete. Am I alone in wondering what exactly the threat is here? Where are all the usual Mario enemies? What is actually trying to stop me from completing my task? Well, simply put, the only enemy in this game is ignorance. And personally, I think that is very deep and quite meaningful. In today's society especially, a message like that can go a long way in helping cultivate a healthy attitude towards, good God, this game is fucking boring! And not to mention long. After you clear this room, there are 2 other rooms to go through. So in total, there are 15 separate time periods to visit, and that means a minimum of 15 times that you have to do this surfing minigame. It's not that it's particularly difficult, it's just so tedious. You need to collect 10 mushrooms before you can exit through the whirlpool, and if you don't have enough, you end up back at the castle and have to start again. However, you also have to avoid these spiny shells, and if you hit one, just one, you lose every single mushroom you've collected so far. Now, avoiding them would be relatively easy, except there appears to be something wrong with the graphics. The shells and mushrooms are flickering in and out a lot, and it's hard to know where they are. I've looked at videos online and they don't seem to be doing this in any of them. I can only assume that it's a problem with my physical copy of the game that I'm playing on my Super Nintendo console. In terms of its actual educational content, Mario's Time Machine has a lot going for it. The eras you visit span all the way from ancient Greece to the mid-20th century, and the game features a wide array of historical figures such as Joan of Arc, Ludwig van Beethoven, Ferdinand Magellan. But I've got to say, some of the subjects that this game gets into can be a little jarring. There's some obvious time travel tropes, like meeting William Shakespeare or going to ancient Egypt. That stuff is to be expected. And while the game never goes as far as to send Mario back to Nazi Germany in order to return Hitler's missing armband, some of the topics brought up are still a little bit heavy for a Mario game aimed at children. Do you know anything else about Jefferson? Well, he owns some slaves, but he keeps trying to make slavery illegal. It's pretty confusing, really. As far as I'm concerned, I wish he'd practice what he preaches. So, his fasting ended the violence? Sadly, no. Violence is never far away. Even now, many Hindus and Muslims will not live together. For that reason, India and Pakistan So after all that nonsense and boring trivia about Cleopatra's cat, you'd think maybe we at least get a satisfying ending, right? Don't be ridiculous. After returning all the stolen items, we go to confront Bowser in his throne room, but he legs it before we can get there, and now he's on holiday. Bowser has escaped. You need to finish quicker. Try again for a different ending. You know, despite how tedious and boring I found the game and how much I hated completing it once, surprisingly, I actually just looked up the other endings on YouTube. And yeah, they're not much better. If you finish the game faster, Bowser just gets sent back to the dinosaur times, and if you did everything in the right order, he's horrifically crushed to death by a giant foot. Gruesome! Oh, man, this game has pretty much emptied my brain. I need some kind of intellectual break. So let's play a game literally designed for babies. Released just a year later in 1994, Mario's Early Years for the SNES is a baby game. It's primarily designed to teach young children the basics of life, such as shapes, colours, numbers, and Marxist economic theory. Something you'll probably notice straight away is how slightly off some of the sprites are. Mario looks okay. He's a bit bootlegged, but we still love him. However, it's the rest of the gang where things become a bit concerning. What the fuck happened to you lot? Yoshi's looking pretty fucking emaciated, Mario. Are you sure you've been feeding him right? And I see that Peach went a bit mental with the fake tan. I don't think that's good for your skin. And the less said about Luigi's swole arms, the better. Mario's Early Years is divided up into several separate mini-games represented by these islands with different things on them. Well, I use the term mini-games, but they're more like homework. For example, clicking on this pile of shapes takes you to Shape World, where the game will call out a shape and you have to click on it. Very similarly, just above that is the color identifying mini-game, where, you guessed it, you have to identify colors. Whereas if you click on this cow with PTSD, you get to pick out animals based on the sound they make.
Find the picture which makes this sound.
Yeah, that's definitely a pig.
You found the pig.
You may have also noticed the compressed little girl's voice talking to you throughout the game. This may have been the early 90s, technology may have not been where it is today, but that doesn't excuse it from being both creepy and annoying.
Choose the things which are the opposite of dry.
This game is the opposite of fun.
Find the things which are the opposite of over.
Well, that's easy. On the subject of voices, whenever you pick a correct answer in this game, you get a congratulatory message that I think is supposed to be Mario, but it sounds wrong.
You found it! Super! You did well! That works for me! I like your choice! I like your choice!
Aside from that, there's not much else this game has to offer. There's an island where you point at Mario's body parts and he does things. I don't know why they made the sun give you fucking bedroom eyes, but there we go. And the thing that you'd think was gonna be maths isn't even maths. It's just counting. Basic ass counting. No sums or division, just explaining what numbers are. I have no idea why we're even here. Well, that was shit, actually. Now, if I were to say to you Luigi's first game, you'd quite understandably think of Luigi's Mansion.
Luigi!
But what if I told you that this wasn't actually Luigi's first game? Way back in the depths of 1993, a full 8 years before Luigi took up ghostbusting as a career, he starred in a little-known game called Mario is Missing. Yeah, he wasn't even in the title of his own game. I can kind of see why he started weightlifting now. Poor guy must have felt so inadequate compared to his brother. The game begins with Mario somehow being distracted by the unfinished title screen and falling down a big hole, which takes him to Antarctica, where both Luigi and Yoshi are waiting for him. One terrible pun later, and Mario ends up falling down another hole for some reason, and Luigi springs into action. You wait here, I'm going in to find him.
ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Once inside the castle, we're met with 5 doors that naturally we're going to want to enter. Thankfully, unlike Mario's Time Machine, we don't have to play a tedious surfing level to get to where we need to go. You just pop through the doorway and there you... Ah, I see we're surrounded. I surrender. Oh? The enemies don't even hurt me. Well, I'm sorry, I just thought that maybe this was a fucking game. I mean, I guess it's more of a game than this, but that's a pretty low standard to hold yourself to. Now, you're probably wondering what it is you actually have to do in this game, and more importantly, what the educational aspect is. Well, you see these random NPCs skipping about the place? These guys play a similar role to those in Mario's Time Machine in that they give you information. Unlike that game, however, these guys are dickheads and don't tell you anything useful. Where am I?
This is sort of a riddle. Remember Nero and his fiddle?
So the deal here is to talk to people and figure out where you are. They'll give you clues in the most vague sense of the word clue, and it's up to you to work out what the fuck they're talking about.
Maybe I should wear a suit, because this country is shaped like a boot.
You sicken me. Okay, I'm not going to waste any more of my time talking to these people. There's an information desk right here, and according to the strangely familiar woman behind the counter, the Sistine Chapel has been closed because someone stole the ceiling. What, like the entire thing? What? So it turns out that 3 of the most popular tourist spots in this city, which is Rome if you hadn't figured it out, have had something stolen from them. A spear from the Colosseum, some coins from the Trevi Fountain, and yes, the entire ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. I would point out that the Sistine Chapel isn't actually in Rome, but that would bring up a discussion on the statehood of the Vatican, and I really don't want to deal with that right now. As you've probably put together, the objective of this game is to find and return missing items while also learning about them and their place in history. Did I mention this game was made by the same people behind Mario's Time Machine? So where even are the stolen items? Come on, you gotta at least give me a hint here. I'm a modern gamer. If my objective isn't literally on a pedestal, I won't be able to find it. So hey, do you remember those Koopas from earlier? The ones who've apparently all taken vows of non-violence? Well, surprise, it turns out that it was them who stole the items we need. Well, a few of them have at least, and since the game gives me no peaceful alternative, we're forced to kill every single Koopa we come across. Ethnic genocide! It's the American way! Oh, well, actually, I suppose it'd be the Italian way in this case, because, whatever. After retrieving the missing items, you'd think that would be it. We just return them and beat the stage, but no! In true educational game fashion, we now have to randomly answer some trivia questions. Why? To prove our goods are authentic. Wait, but it's the bloody ceiling of the Sistine Chapel! What more do you want? I suppose this is where the NPCs would have come in handy. Oh wait, no! They wouldn't, because you're literally given an information pamphlet when you're told that the landmark is closed. And even if you didn't read any of that, there's no penalty for getting an answer wrong. You just walk away, come back and try again. So, I pretty much guessed my entire way through this game, and I'm not even ashamed. Once you've returned all the missing things from the level, it's time for Yoshi to come pick you up. You have to move him to your current location on the world map, so this is where actually knowing where you are would come in handy. Ha! Well, lucky for me, I'm really good at maps! Oh, there we go. Right. Rome. Where is Rome? It should be right here. Oh! Of course! Rome was destroyed in the Great Doom of Valyria! How could I forget? Once Yoshi picks you up and scares away the pokey blocking the exit, you're free to leave the stage, return to the castle and enter another door. Oh goodness, where are we now? Oh, I see. We're in Racist. To tell you the truth, I couldn't stand playing much more of this game. I completed the first 5 levels, pretty much never speaking to anyone unless it was by accident, and I continued my strategy of guessing answers and racially profiling Koopas, and it worked. Eventually, I got to the first boss, who, surprise surprise, can't fucking hurt you either. And to be honest, I gave up. So those were just a few educational Mario games. I suppose the big question is, were they any good? Well, I'm 21 years old, so I don't think that I'm the target audience here. To properly ascertain whether or not these games would work as educational tools for children, I'd have to think with the mind of a child. However, that surgery is both highly unethical and also illegal, so sadly that's not an option that we can take here. I think my main problem with these games is just how boring and unengaging they all are. I mean, learning is awesome. All you really need is the right method, and really you can make anyone interested in expanding their own personal knowledge. Take history, for example. Did you know that King James, yes, the very same King James who commissioned the English translation of the Bible, had secret tunnels built in his home so that he could see his male lovers? And on the subject of shapes, did you know that this square being caught in a strong breeze is actually called a parallelogram? Which also sounds like a procedure that you would go through to locate your evil twin in another universe. And as for geography, did you know that the Southeast African nation of Mozambique is the only country in the world to have a fucking gun on its flag? That is objectively cool! I don't know anything else about Mozambique, and let's be honest, neither do you. But now the one thing we both know is awesome! If playing these games has taught me anything, it's that you need to fully engage someone's interest for anything that you may be trying to teach them to actually stick. You can cram a student's head full of information all you like, but once the test is over, they're not going to remember it. To truly educate someone takes more than just having them memorize historical dates or point and click on what you tell them to. In my opinion, it requires a more holistic approach, a personal touch if you will. And I firmly believe that we as a society would greatly benefit from the abolition of stultified bureaucratic non-solutions, such as IQ testing, privatization or block granting, and to create smaller, more personal learning experiences that all students can benefit from. And most importantly, I've learned that racial profiling works like 100% of the time, and it's actually a really effective strategy for solving crime, and I think that it should be done more often than... Hey! Thanks for watching, everybody! I hope you enjoyed this video. My question of the day is, what was your favourite subject at school? Myself, I was a big fan of art and history. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like, a comment, and maybe subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. And don't forget, you can follow me on Twitter @TheTransHeel. I've been MayRey, and I'll see you all next time.